Hey guys, it's Adam again from Clay Art Center, and we're celebrating Global Day of Clay by giving demos of all of our artists in residence. Right now we're going to be demoing with Zoey Scheler. She has a BFA from Pratt and then an MFA from SUNY Purchase. So welcome, Zoe.
Thank you. Hello everyone. Welcome to my studio. So, today I threw some bowls that I have already trimmed and ready to decorate, if you will. And I will be doing that with you all. My work is very much about texture and space and thinking about how I can really take up as much space as possible with really, really tiny objects. And to do that, I use a lot of different forms of clay and a lot of different ways of attaching and adding different elements. So what I'm going to start with is cleaning up this bowl a little bit because we want to have a really nice surface for me to decorate. And I am using a white stoneware. I fire to cone 5, but it is a cone 6 white stoneware. I love it because it's really, really smooth and throws really beautifully, very similarly to some porcelains I've worked with, but it has the structure and ability for me to attach a lot of little tiny things to it and not deal with cracking or breaking and anything like that. So I really like working with it. You'll see some of my favorite tools is my handy dandy extruder that does not work very well, but I have mastered working it the wrong way. I've got some little pipes over here that I don't know what these pipes would actually be used for, but they really make some great textures. My needle tool, and I always have a ton of different needle tools. My lovely knife that I got from an artist that I'm probably going to say her name wrong, Cuming Park, and she's an incredible sculpture artist, and she recommended this knife and serrated scraper tool, and it's the best tool ever. And then some cake decorating tools or sculpey tools that I use to indent and make textures, and that's what I'm going to start with. So I'm going to hold my bowl while I do this because I'm actually applying a significant amount of pressure to get these textures impressed into the body of the form. So I like to brace it while I go. Now I don't know how interesting of a demo this will be for you because my process involves a lot of teeny little details that sort of add up to being something a little more dramatic. So for now I'm going to continue pressing this sort of teeny little metal ball that creates what I like to call like a golf ball texture, and I can show you on one of my finished ornaments, which will be in the Clay Art Center's annual holiday sale starting November 18th. You can see this beautiful detail that I get on the back of this ornament, which sort of looks like a golf ball, and it takes my underglaze really well because it starts to sort of sit in the little crevices, and then I can play around with wiping away and adding more color. So that is what the texture that I'm adding to this bowl right now. My work, as you can see, is normally really small scale. Those ornaments aren't that much smaller than the scale of my sculptural work. I now think maybe I'll think about doing hanging sculptures because I love this idea of seeing my pieces in space. So actually creating ornaments or small hanging pieces has really made me think about how I might go about showing work in a different way. I've always been interested in seeing my pieces lifted and in space in some way, how they can be seen in the round, and actually seeing these little pieces rotate and move is really interesting and exciting. So something new to consider with my future work. And here I was for a while doing functional pottery when I was living in Colorado before getting my MFA. And so it's fun for me to see how I can do this functional work like bowls, or these are some cups I'm thinking about, cup designs, thinking about how I can bring these really ornate sort of textures and designs and techniques to something that could be used. They still would totally function, though I wouldn't recommend banging them into anything or putting them through a dishwasher, because you'd find lots of little tiny ceramic noodles in there.
Zoe, can you talk about life as an MFA student versus life as a resident at Clay Art Center?
Absolutely. Life as an MFA student was pretty incredible because you got to have 2 years to really focus and develop your work. However, you're always working towards something, whether it's a critique or having an artist come in for a review. There's always this sort of feeling in the back of your head that you are about to be analyzed and critiqued and told everything you could possibly imagine about this object you just created and put your heart and soul into. Sometimes it being positive and sometimes not so much. And that was great. I mean, I got such incredible feedback and met really incredible artists and had really great conversations about my work that pushed me, I really believe, to be able to have the voice and ability to articulate what it is that I'm doing, which then led me to this residency, because I don't think without that I would have had any idea how to put into words what it is that I do and why I love it so much and why I feel that this is just the beginning of my ceramic journey. So as a resident, I come in and I make, and I don't have to talk to anyone if I don't want to, and I love that. I love that I'm making, and I'm making for me, and if I want, there's an incredible community of artists that I can bring into my studio at any time to talk to about my work, and I do that a lot, and I love it. But it feels a lot less like I'm working for a grade or doing this for somebody else. It really feels like I'm developing this body of work, and this discovery is about me and about my sort of ceramic journey, rather than it being for, like I said, a grade or to impress a faculty member that I want to have as a reference or something like that. I just feel a lot less pressure, but at the same time am surrounded by people that are doing what I love, which is working with clay. So I'm constantly learning and being challenged in different ways. It just doesn't feel quite as, I guess, academic, which makes sense, I think. So I've almost made it around the bowl. I promise. The next moment will come, and I won't go up as high as I might have if I wasn't on video, because I want you to see what is next. But it's really important that I do these, or I take the time to create these textures, because this is where the fun and the magic sort of happens when I come in with underglaze and glaze, because it gives places for the glaze and underglaze to do different things, whether it's sitting in a little nook and cranny and I'm wiping away the surface, or I'm really filling it with glaze, so you're thinking that there's a texture there, but when you go to actually touch it, it's not there at all. It really is underneath that glassy surface. So it's sort of a build-up. I'm building up these textures, but then also in the end sort of taking them away.
And do you use commercial glazes and underglazes?
I do. I am a big fan of commercial underglazes and glazes, because you know what you're going to get. I do. I mean, I love the magic of one of my jobs here as a resin artist is loading and unloading the gas kiln, and it's one of my favorite things because I get to see these pieces go in and completely transform. But that totally scares me when it comes to my own work, so I like the control and that I know exactly what I'm going to get when it goes in. So, and I think because I work with such bright colors, I've really, Amico, who I love, has created these velvet underglazes that really do what it is that I'm looking for in my work, so I haven't really felt the need to create my own glazes and underglazes at this point. I just love the intense colors, and I love that the underglazes can really be worked with like paint, that I'm able to mix them and combine them, but also treat them differently, whether I'm treating them like watercolor and adding a lot of water to it, or applying thicker, really hoping for really opaque coverage. So I find that I'm able to be really painterly with them. So I'm almost there. I've got this little patchy area fill up with this sort of golf ball texture. And you'll see I didn't sort of do a perfect, it's kind of all over the place. I don't know how close I have to be. Hopefully you saw that. And I'm just going to sort of feather the edge. I don't want it to be this perfect sort of loop of the texture. So I'm going to feather it around a bit. And then the extruder is going to come, which is just my favorite tool because it makes me feel like I'm playing with Play-Doh again and have the potential to make spaghetti hair, and who wouldn't want to be squeezing out spaghetti hair clay? I mean, it's my favorite thing to do. So, almost there. Just adding a few little scattered dots because I like them to come through. I want you to see, the reason I'm starting with this texture before doing the sort of applique of my spaghetti is so that some of that texture comes through when I apply this to the surface of the form. I don't want it to be, I want it to feel like there's life underneath each layer, so that's sort of where I'm thinking. So my extruder, that at one time you could turn, but no longer can, I press very hard on this table, like so, and there come the noodles. Really scientific, this process. And then I kind of bunch them. I like them to look sort of as natural as possible from how they came out of the tube, and like you saw, they're shooting in the wrong direction, so my hand has to be involved in this part. And then, because my piece is still very moist, as you can see I was able to apply that texture, I don't slip and score. I break all ceramic rules doing this. And I'm going to apply my, and I gently press it so that I know that this will be stuck to the form, and my glazing and underglazes also enhance its sticking ability. I apply it, but I make sure that I'm not squishing it because I really want the nuances of all the overlapping and the noodles swirling. I don't want it to look like my fingers were involved. So I'm really sort of gently pressing in all the areas, making sure that they're adhered to the piece. And I'll continue, so you can see there. I'll continue, and I like it to either come off the bottom or come from the top. There's something about it that reminds me of like flowing forms. So I don't know if I'm thinking about water. Sometimes I think about like, it kind of looks like it's being barfed out. If you look at this vase, you can see I had it like spewing over the top, sort of like a waterfall. And you'll see I use a lot of microme wire in my work as well. I'll do a little something with that before the end of this. So I'm going to continue. You'll see, and sometimes I get shot in the face with this, so don't mind if I do. And I will create my little spaghetti pile again and continue working on this bowl. And you'll see it's sort of, I really let the material sort of control itself. I'm really not doing much other than getting it to be in this sort of interesting clump, if you will. And I like to make sure I have some little pieces singularly showing because it creates a line. It creates almost like a drawing on the surface of the form because you're seeing that underside coming through as well. And then I'm thinking we'll do like one more cluster. But I like sometimes not having it completely wrap around. I like to be able to not have complete symmetry. I'm dealing with a bowl that's perfectly symmetrical, or as perfect as I made it. And so I like these sort of the decorative qualities or the applique that I do to be a little more organic and free, a little less controlled than the actual form or structure that I'm starting with. And I, like Mike was saying earlier, I too like to work in series because I like having, for me it's more about starting with a lot of pieces to then work out a process. So I threw like 10 bowls, 10 mugs for this little series that I'm working on, and when I was working on the ornaments that I showed earlier, I would start by throwing like 50 teeny little pieces off the wheel, and then those become the elements that I build with and sort of create these other more free and more exciting objects from the multitude of littler parts and pieces. So I like to sort of start with a lot so that so I don't feel limited in my choices. more is better for me. And also I feel like I discover a lot more about my work when I work in a series, because I'm not feeling so precious about each object that I'm working on, but rather I feel like I'm constantly discovering more. So we've reached a point where I think I'm going to just show quickly what it is I do with the nichrome wire. Sometimes, as you can see, I use it completely on its own, not having it be incorporated with another material like a ceramic piece. I'll have it really sort of be a wire drawing on the surface of my form. But other times I really like the extension to then be an extension of the piece itself. So you can see on this cup, it's as if a little ball of the surface jumped off of itself and sort of came off of it. So that's what I'm going to do on this bowl. I'm going to use a small piece of nichrome wire that I already have cut over here. And I'm going to grab, I have always, when I have little scraps of clay, whether it's from my extruder or just a little piece that I used from when I was trimming, I always make these teeny little pieces and parts that I know I can use to have as appendages or little shoot-offs on my pieces. And to me, it's like I'm drawing in space with a teeny three-dimensional object. I'm creating more area of interest around the piece because I'm bringing the piece off of itself, if that makes sense. So for this one, I think I'm going to do this little funny guy that sort of looks like a funnel. And because I use that golf ball texture, I'm going to do the same thing on the surface of this. Luckily, it's much tinier, so it'll go quicker. I'm going to apply this texture, and then this will get attached to the piece, probably from the bottom. And the reason for that is I like that it looks sort of like it's growing. I'm thinking about it as a root, sort of, like it would be growing from the bottom of the piece out. But also, a lot of times when I trim my work, I leave a little bit of, on my throne work, I leave a little bit of extra weight at the bottom. So that works really well for me being able to sort of insert and place this wire, knowing that A, it won't come through the whole form, but B, that I have somewhere that can really anchor it into place. So I'm going to finish doing this pattern on here, and then we'll attach it.
Zoe, where can people find more information about you and your work?
You can find more information about me and my work on my website, which is zoeybscheler.com. My full name, my middle name is just the letter B. Most people don't know that, but it's just the letter B. It's not, doesn't stand for anything. No period after it. Or on Instagram, which is also Zoey Scheler. And I love Instagram because I'm able to just put images of my work, my process. It's fun for me to be able to show from greenware all the way through to the end of my process. And also, it's where I get to see and converse with so many incredible ceramic artists, which is awesome. So, you'll see this has been totally textured on the outside. I'm leaving the plane of the top of it untouched because I really like having these super smooth planes for me to apply really glossy, intense colors, because it's sort of like I've sliced into this piece of clay, and what's revealed is this like beautiful, crisp, flat plane of color. So I will take this little piece of wire, nichrome wire that I have. I like the high fire, I believe it's 17 gauge wire, because it has a nice weight to it, but it's not too thick and too heavy. And I stick it into this piece, and these little pieces are like a little softer than leather hard, but have enough structure that this wire isn't like loose and gonna move around in there. And then I'm gonna find on my piece where I feel like it would be best suited, and I think I like the area where I've left it without spaghetti, so it really looks like this is a growth off of that pattern that I created with the golf ball. So I'm simply going to insert my wire, make sure that it doesn't come through to the inside, which it doesn't, and there's my little bowl. And I'll probably play around with the bend of it, because as you can see, it's sort of sitting tabletop, and I'll probably want it to come up a little bit, but I'll play around with my wire tools when I find them. Anything else? Any questions or anything more?
Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the other side.